5 years of loyalty vanished the moment I watched my manager smirk, tap the edge of my raise request with her nail, and toss it into her trash bin as if it carried no weight. Delaney Rhodes did not even pause. She just muttered, "Cute signature," and reached for her phone. What she did not know was that the same signature she mocked sat on the single patent her entire division depended on, and by the time she understood that, the company's foundations would already be shaking. That morning, the chaos inside North Point Systems spread faster than gossip. I heard it before I saw it, phones ringing nonstop, someone swearing behind a closed conference room door, HR calling emergency meetings one after another. A cluster of engineers hovered near the elevators, whispering, "There's a legal threat. Something about unauthorized use. Everything goes down if this is real." No one said my name, but I felt the shift, the tremor. I stood behind them for a moment, unseen, the same way I had always been. Then the scene shattered, and I was back in the past 5 years earlier, walking into North Point for the first time with the naive hope that hard work would eventually be enough. I gave them late nights, early mornings, and every ounce of focus I had. When servers crashed, I was the one called. When a deployment broke at midnight, I stayed on the line until dawn. People praised my fixes but forgot my name in the same breath. I let it slide, telling myself that quiet workers still rose if they proved their worth long enough. But on the afternoon, I asked for a raise. Everything I swallowed for 5 years surfaced at once. I handed Delaney my request and explained what I had built, what I had carried, how deeply I had kept the company afloat. She barely looked at me. "Leave it here," she said, sliding the paper aside like it was junk mail. "Nice signature." I walked out, stunned but hoping she would actually read it. Then I returned for my water bottle. Through the half-open door, I saw her drop my request straight into the trash. When I first joined North Point Systems, I was 26 and believed every word they told me during the interview. "We're scrappy. We're collaborative. We grow together," the CTO said, patting my resume like it was a passport to a better life. I nodded, eager, stupidly proud that a Portland startup wanted me at all. My first month set the tone. The servers crashed 3 times in 1 week, and every time someone yelled my name down the hallway, "Alina, can you look at this?" No one else can trace it. I stayed past midnight more nights than I can count, eating stale pretzels and talking to logs like they were old friends. When I finally built the adaptive allocation algorithm, the one that became the North Point flow engine, people congratulated me in the break room. "Seriously, you saved us," one engineer whispered. "Management better give you something big," another added. But upstairs, where the actual decisions lived, Delaney nodded once and said, "Nice work. Let's push it live. No mention of ownership. No documentation. Not even a meeting invite when they presented it to the board. Just a pat on the shoulder like I was a lab assistant who mixed the right chemical on accident. Months passed, then years, and the pattern never changed. I fixed outages. I rewrote broken code other people deployed. I pulled the company out of disasters no one else knew how to diagnose. And still, in every review, Delaney tilted her head and said the same line, "You're valuable, Alina. But you're quiet, not quite leadership material." One afternoon, after another successful deployment, I decided to test something. I asked Delaney, lightly, should I add my name to the documentation for the flow engine? Just for clarity. She didn't even look up from her laptop. "Don't worry about paperwork. We're a family here." I believed her then. I let the words settle like a promise. Years later, I would understand it for what it truly was, a warning disguised as affection. I spent the night before drafting my raise request the same way I had spent every crisis at North Point Systems alone at my kitchen table with a notebook full of numbers. I wrote out the improvements I had delivered over 5 years, reduced outage time by more than half, cut infrastructure costs by tens of thousands of dollars, stabilized systems that used to collapse every other month. I listed everything calmly, factually, like someone who finally believed her own worth. Before printing it, I paused. My mother's name sat at the top of a medical bill on my counter. I ran a thumb along the total and amount I had been quietly covering without telling her. I folded the bill, turned back to my request, and signed my name with a steadiness I did not feel. Delaney called me in just after lunch. "Sit, Alina," she said with that clipped sweetness she saved for moments she wanted something. I offered the document across the desk, and she lifted it with 2 fingers as if it were a smudged receipt. "I've outlined the impact of the flow engine updates." I began. She interrupted with a sharp smile. "No need to explain. I'll look it over." Her eyes skimmed the top line, then drifted to the signature at the bottom. "Okay, leave it here." "Ah, nice signature." The way she said it, light, amused, dismissive, made heat rise up my neck. I swallowed and nodded anyway. "Thank you for your time." I walked out trying to convince myself that maybe she would read it. Maybe this was the start of something different. I reached my desk, realized I had forgotten my water bottle, and turned back. The door to her office was slightly open. She held my request between 2 fingers, hesitated just long enough to check her phone, then dropped it straight into the trash. Not even a flinch. A quiet breath slipped out of me, the kind that felt like something tearing. As I stepped back, I saw a junior engineer, Marcus, freeze in the hallway. He looked at me, then at the trash bin, then back at me with a soft, terrified apology in his eyes. He said nothing. I said nothing, but something in me shifted all the same. I sat at my desk with my hands still trembling. The office buzzed around me, phones ringing, chairs rolling, people talking about deployment deadlines, but none of it touched me. I kept seeing the moment Delaney let my raise request slide into the trash like it was lint on her sleeve. My throat tightened, then loosened in a way that felt strangely final. I opened a blank document. No preamble, no apologies. "Please accept this letter as my formal resignation from North Point Systems, effective immediately. Thank you for the opportunities provided during my 5 years here." 5 years, condensed into 2 polite sentences. I added my name, read it once, then closed my laptop. The shaking stopped. Something steadier took its place. Marcus passed my desk and hesitated. "Alina, are you okay?" "I'm done," I said quietly. His eyes widened, but he nodded as if he understood more than he could say aloud. I printed the letter, the paper still warm when I picked it up. Every step toward Delaney's office felt like peeling off a layer I no longer needed. She was on a call, laughing about something, her feet kicked up on the corner of her desk. She didn't notice me at first. I set the letter down right in front of her. She glanced at it, frowned, and covered the phone's microphone. "What's this, my resignation?" Her eyebrows twitched, then smoothed into indifference. "You can't just I can," I said, my voice steady. "And I am." Before she could respond, I turned and walked out. No explanation, no waiting for approval, no shrinking into myself the way I used to. I didn't look back when I stepped into the elevator. The doors closed, and it felt like something inside me closed with them. By the time I reached the parking lot, my phone buzzed. An email from HR. "We would like to schedule your exit interview for next week." They had no idea what they had already lost. I sat on the edge of my small apartment's sofa, the silence pressing in harder than any meeting room at North Point ever had. My place overlooked the Willamette River, though at that moment I barely registered anything except the dull throb behind my eyes. I set my bag down, reached under the couch, and pulled out a worn gray folder I had not touched in years. Inside, the paper was crisp, untouched by time. Patent number 14-872-FE. Adaptive Load Allocation Algorithm. Inventor Alina Mercer. Seeing my name printed there made my breath catch. For a moment, my hands hovered above the page, as if touching it would make the whole thing too real. I remembered exactly when I had filed it, back in my early months at North Point, when the flow engine was nothing more than a handful of frantic sketches on my whiteboard. I had been teaching part-time at a community workshop back then, And one evening after class, my retired professor, Elias Quinn, stopped me in the hallway. "You look like you're building something important," he said. "Maybe. I'm still figuring out the structure," I told him. He tapped the stack of notes in my hands. "File early. Never trust a startup's 'we're family' line. Families share, companies take." I laughed at the time, thinking he was being dramatic. But that next morning, before Northpoint drafted any formal IP paperwork, I filled out the application myself, paid the fee in installments, ate ramen for dinner for weeks, and then I sent it off under my own name. Now, years later, I stared at the document and felt the weight of everything I did not know back then. Northpoint had built their entire flow engine on this. Delaney had bragged about it in meetings. The CEO had pitched it to investors like it was the company's crown jewel. They thought they owned it. But legally, it was mine. Every line, every idea, every piece of architecture they depended on. The folder trembled a little in my hands. Fear, pride, disbelief, they all hit at once. This was the leverage I never meant to have, the leverage they never imagined I held. I spent the next morning at my kitchen table, the patent folder open beside my laptop. Every search result pointed to the same name, Stratus Forge Technologies, Northpoint's loudest and most capable competitor, headquartered in Seattle. Their engineers had spoken at conferences I could never afford to attend. Their CEO had once called Northpoint's products brilliant on paper, unstable in practice. He had been right. I drafted a short email. No attachments, no details, just a hint. I hold legal ownership of the algorithm Northpoint Systems uses as its core product. If you are interested in discussing potential licensing or acquisition terms, I can provide preliminary documentation. Within 2 hours, a reply arrived. "We would like to meet. Confidential setting. Tomorrow at 9 in the morning." The next day, I sat across from 2 Stratus Forge executives in a glass-walled conference room that felt colder than the Seattle air outside. A woman introduced herself first. "I'm Dana Lewis, General Counsel. You must be Alina Mercer." I nodded. "Thank you for seeing me. Your email was intriguing," she said, sliding a notepad toward herself. "Show us what you brought." I handed over the patent folder. Dana lifted the first page, scanning it carefully. The silence stretched until a man beside her Stratus Forge's CTO, Jonah Hale, leaned forward. "Northpoint built their engine on this?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "Every deployment, every update, every client presentation." Dana exhaled slowly. "Then they have a problem. A very big one." Jonah tapped the table. "We want to buy full rights and enforce the patent. You would be fully compensated, and we would take on all legal responsibilities. I want protections." I said, "Written protections, no buried clauses, no loopholes." Dana's mouth lifted. "Of course. We don't operate like Northpoint." As she drafted terms, she added, almost casually, "You should know they're pitching the flow engine to a Fortune 100 company this week. If this contract closes, the damages could be immense." The room tilted for a moment. I had known the violation was serious. I had not known it was global. Dana pushed the agreement toward me. "If you sign, we move immediately." I held the pen, the same kind I used to sign my raise request, and wrote my name with a steady hand. A new signature, one Delaney Rhodes would never laugh at again. The cease and desist notices went out less than 24 hours after I signed. Donna emailed me a copy, the language sharp enough to cut steel. By that afternoon, my phone buzzed non-stop, not from Stratus Forge, but from the people still trapped inside Northpoint Systems. A message from an unknown number appeared first. "Alina, something big is happening. Did you hear?" Then another. "Emergency meetings all day. Delaney looks like she's about to pass out." Then a third. "They said unauthorized use of patented architecture. Are they talking about your algorithm?" I sat on my couch, the patent folder still open beside me, and read each message without replying. My hands felt oddly steady, as if my body had finally caught up to a truth my mind had known for years. Around 6 in the evening, a screenshot came through, no name attached, just the image. A Slack message from the chief architect. If this patent holds, the entire flow engine collapses. Stop all deployments until further notice. I stared at the words, not with satisfaction, but with a cold clarity I had never felt before. They had built their future on something they never bothered to understand, never thought to respect, never imagined I might protect. 48 hours later, the first major client pulled out. Someone texted me a photo of the internal email chain. A contract worth more than $2 million canceled due to unresolved intellectual property concerns. The panic in their replies bled through the timestamps. Marcus messaged me again. Delaney is blaming the engineering team. Everyone's scared. They say legal is drowning. A pause. I hope you're okay. I typed a response, then deleted it. Not because I was angry, but because I finally understood the scale of what North Point had taken from me. This wasn't a ripple. It was the beginning of the wave that would wash through every corner of the company. By the third day, the messages coming from North Point shifted from panic to outright chaos. I received a brief text from Marcus first. They pulled Delaney into a closed-door meeting with the chief executive officer. She looked sick. An hour later, another message followed. Internal audit found warnings she ignored. They said she dismissed documentation requests more than a dozen times. I set my phone aside, but it buzzed again almost instantly this time with an unknown number flashing across the screen. For a moment, I considered ignoring it. Then I answered. Alina Delaney's voice cracked like she had been crying for hours. Please, I need to talk to you. I said nothing. They're saying I mishandled everything. She rushed on. But you know that's not true. You know how much stress I was under. You know I always supported you. You threw my raise request in the trash, I said. My tone was steady, but I felt the heat rise through her silence. That was a mistake, she whispered. A stupid moment. I can fix it. If you help me clear this, I can get you back in. We can negotiate something better for you. Anything, Alina. Please. Her desperation came through every word, but I felt no satisfaction, just a strange, heavy calm. I'm not coming back, I said, and I'm not helping you. She inhaled sharply, like I had slapped her. You don't understand what they'll do to me. I understand exactly, I replied. Before she could respond, I ended the call. A few hours later, Marcus sent one more update. They suspended her pending full investigation. HR is reviewing security footage from her office. They saw her throw your request away. I leaned back, letting the truth settle in the quiet room. Then my email chimed. A message from a private account. A North Point board member here. I need to confirm your version of events. Things are worse than you realize. Their collapse had reached deeper than I ever expected. The first morning after Delaney's suspension, I opened my banking app and paid every one of my mother's medical bills in full. Seeing zero balances where there had once been numbers that made my chest tighten felt like stepping into a different version of my life. A version where I wasn't constantly bracing for the next crisis. Within a week, I moved to a smaller, quieter neighborhood in Lake Oswego. When the leasing agent handed me the keys, she said, "It's peaceful here. Good place to start over." I smiled without explaining just how right she was. Job offers began arriving almost immediately. Big companies, small startups, firms I had never heard of. Every pitch sounded the same once I stripped away the charm. We want your mind on our side. We want your architecture thinking. We want your ability to outmaneuver competitors. One recruiter even said, "You're a strategic asset now." Asset, not person. I turned them all down. Instead, I opened a new blank notebook and began drafting an idea that had been tucked in the back of my mind for years, a platform built on transparency, attribution, and shared credit. No hidden ownership, No stolen work. No gaslighting disguised as mentorship. Something clean. Something honest. Something mine. I worked quietly at my dining table, sketching out modules, writing logic flows, muttering to myself the same way I had during late-night emergency deployments. But this time, no one was waiting to take the credit. No one was watching over my shoulder. Every line belonged to me. One afternoon, an email appeared from an old colleague. Priya, we saw the news. I always knew you carried that place. I'm sorry I didn't say it sooner. Then another from a senior engineer I barely knew. You deserved better than all of us. I hope you're finally building something worthy of you. Their words warmed something in me I thought North Point had permanently numbed. I kept writing, kept building, kept shaping the blueprint of the world I wanted to work in. The world I wished I had found when I was 26 before Delaney, before North Point, before 5 years of shrinking myself so others could feel bigger. For the first time, the future felt like something I could write on my own terms. The fallout hit North Point systems faster than anyone predicted. By the end of the week, the board released a formal statement announcing Delaney Rhodes's termination for negligence, documentation fraud, and repeated ethical violations. Reporters quoted it like a warning. Engineers reposted it like a confession. Her name became the headline she never expected. 2 days later, the chief executive officer stepped down. Investors fled after the flow engine collapsed under Stratus Forge's patent enforcement. A deal worth more than $200 million evaporated overnight. North Point tried to spin it as a temporary restructuring, but everyone knew it was over. Delaney emailed me late that night. The preview alone filled half the screen line after line of apologies, excuses, long paragraphs about stress and pressure and how everything spiraled out of her control. She said she wished she had treated me better. She said she hoped I understood how hard leadership had been. She said losing the company was punishment enough. I read none of it. I dragged the email into a folder I never opened and closed the app. Some doors you close. Others you lock from the outside and walk away without the urge to check if anyone escapes. My own project sat open on my screen clean code. Honest structure. A foundation no one could steal from me. I had already mapped out the first prototype. This time, there were no hidden clauses, no verbal promises, no managers with forced smiles pretending to care. Every choice was mine. Priya messaged me again that evening. You deserve everything good coming your way. Tell me when you're ready to show the world what you're building. I will. I wrote back. Soon. For the first time in years, I felt the weight of my own signature not mocked, not dismissed, not belittled, powerful, steady, mine. The signature Delaney laughed at was the same one that brought down a corrupt system, the same one that protected my work, the same one that let me walk away whole, and the same one that would sign the release of my new platform when it was ready. If you want to hear the full story of how I built it and what happened when the industry tried to come for me again, stick around, subscribe, and stay close. Justice had finally been served. My future was just beginning.